Hi, colleagues. I'm so excited today to be sharing my action research plan with you, which is the effect of word study in the transference to student writing. The first question I want to ask is why word study, or better yet, why not word study? So kind of my push behind this plan is that I notice as a classroom teacher how inconsistent my students are in spelling from the test that they take on Friday to any independent writing that they do. As a school, we have very inconsistent methodology on our spelling practices through the different grade levels. Traditional spelling, there's no differentiation, which leads to a lack of engagement. And spelling is a huge integral part of a balanced literacy program. And so we owe it to our students to have what is best practices in every aspect of that program, including spelling. And so I'm going to go into my introduction. And so the purpose is a word study program more effective than traditional spelling methods? A word study is very beneficial to students because it is research-based, it is very engaging, and it also gives them the confidence that they need not to just spell correctly, but also to when they're spelling independently in their writing, and also when they are decoding as readers. Another great purpose is that this would hopefully provide for school-wide change and that all of us would be on the same page in our spelling methods as a school. And one of the greatest things is that it would allow for differentiation for our students and that we can meet them at their individual needs. Now, word study is very research-based, but there is some evidence needed for teacher buy-in. And those questions that come up are questions of implementation, of scheduling, of application, and teaching strategies. But if we can get all of these questions answered and get our teachers on board, the results for our spelling program could be monumental because our students would be engaged, they would be better spellers, and they would be better writers. So this leads to my research question. What are the effects of word study versus traditional spelling methods on the transference to student writing? And then my hypothesis, which is students will develop an ability to spell based on new learning to prior knowledge, and there will be an increase in better spelling on their test as well as transfer into writing. So next I want to go into my review of literature. And in looking at my theoretical framework, I came across a linguist named Charles Reid. And in 1975, he came up with the notion of invented spelling as he had studied the work of 30 preschoolers. And what he learned was there was a very logical reasoning to their spelling, and that they learned how to spell, or that they actually practiced spelling by arranging letters through phonetic characteristics. And so a little while later, Edmund Henderson and his colleagues built on Reid's work and came up with the notion of developmental spelling. And through that, they led to the 5 stages of spelling behaviors, which we'll talk about a little while later. So early spelling dates back all the way to the 1700s in America. And even all the way back then, it was still based on memorization of words. It wasn't until later that patterns and sounds, there was a notion of patterns and sounds being used in spelling, but it was still memorization, memorization, memorization. And spelling wasn't integrated with other subjects. And there was this phenomenon known as Friday test, Monday miss, because students could accurately spell for their test on Friday, but come Monday, they wouldn't know how to use or spell those words correctly in their writing. Now, looking back a little bit at Charles Reid and Edmund Henderson and how he and his colleagues built on Reid's research and development, they discovered developmental stages in spelling. And Edmund Henderson realized that students, as they go through spelling, they rely less on sounds and more on strategies based on their exposure to print. And through this led to the developmental spelling model. And there were 5 distinct stages. And those stages include preliterate, letter name, within word pattern, syllable juncture, and derivational constancy. And this word study, this development in spelling through this word study really provided a stark contrast to the way that students traditionally learn to spell in the classroom. And it really challenged the notion that they did not learn to spell through memorization and isolation, but that they spelled new words by using concepts built on the prior knowledge that they already had and the understanding that they already had. And so word study through research became validated as an effective approach to spelling and phonics. They noted that word study combined visual, auditory, and semantic methods of spelling, which added to the brain's natural tendency to seek out those increasingly complex patterns. And because of that, because that's how the spelling method worked and that's how our brains worked, that's why traditional spellings were not as effective for students learning to spell. And so a primary goal is not just being able to spell, but also to apply that knowledge to reading and writing processes, and then to allow students to work within their zone of proximal development. There is quite a bit of research that's been done on word study, but it's still lacking on word study and the transfer to writing. Currently, a lady named Sherry Williams and her colleagues have done multiple studies on word study and some outside factors that influence word study, such as small groups and conferring, interactive writing, and then various teaching strategies. One thing I did note was that the spelling level, the spelling transfer into writing reflected the students' ability. So if they were already high-level students, you didn't see as much transfer because the spelling was already there. They were already good spellers. And the low group had a harder time because they had other things to overcome. So they really noted that they saw a lot of transfer with those students in that middle group because they were ready to receive instruction and then apply that to their writing. Now, going into data collection, my population at my school, we are a private school, and 82% Caucasian, 8.6 African American, and then lower numbers with other races. We are middle to high class. 15% of our families qualify for financial aid and no free or reduced lunches. 15 to 20% of our students receive gifted services in reading and math, and then 9% receive reading and math intervention services. My sampling is non-probabilistic because I am a reading specialist, and so I will just be using students that come to me already for intervention, and that will be my treatment group. Those will be my first graders, and then my control group will be another group of students from a particular first grade class. And those two groups will be as closely matched academically as possible. The measures and instruments I'll be using their independent writing journals to measure the transfer of the spelling words that they have learned to their writing journal, as well as weekly spelling scores. I'll collect and measure those percentages of words spelled correctly on their weekly tests. My timeline, no later than September 14th will the consent letters go home. They'll be hopefully filled out and returned in 1 week, and then I will give those to the students to sign the letters of assent. Implementation, I'll start with a primary spelling inventory, and then weeks 1 and week 4, through week 4, I'll implement the word study 5 times a week, every day. I'll collect data on that PSI. I'll also collect data on their weekly journal entries and their weekly spelling scores. And as far as data analysis, I'll be analyzing their PSI for group sampling and evaluation of spelling. I'll be coding their journal writing and as well their weekly spelling percentages on their weekly tests. As far as data analysis, the primary spelling inventory, I'll give that before we begin, and that will be used to analyze their current spelling as well as make sure my two groups are as similar as possible in academics. I'll be using a qualitative method to code their weekly spelling and their writing, and you can see I have 5 areas here that I will be using to code their different words. I'll study their writing and then code them according to these 5 different categories. And then I also have quantitative some descriptive quantitative statistics, and that will be the percentages spelled correctly on their weekly spelling tests. Finally, for my conclusions, we know that word study is effective for spelling practices. We also know that word study can be a very effective tool for writing, and with the aid of small groups, interactive writing, and some other strategies to help bridge word study and that writing together. Spelling is an integral part of an English language arts program, and it's an anchor that needs to be integrated properly to connect all parts of a successful ELA curriculum. And also, hopefully this research will allow classroom teachers to observe the relevance of a word study program and really to note the benefits that it will provide to our students' independent writing potential. Thank you.